I didn't scream when I found out I'd won. I didn't jump or cry or call anyone either. I just sat at my kitchen table, staring at a piece of paper that didn't seem real, like it had been printed for someone else and accidentally slipped into my life. $5 million. That's what it said. 5 million. If you've ever had something happen that felt too big for your body to hold, you'll understand why I didn't move for a long time. And before I tell you how that number turned my marriage into a battlefield, do me a small favor. Stick with me. And if this story hits close to home, make sure you're subscribed and leave a comment about where you're listening from. It helps stories like mine reach people who might need them. I'm 32 years old. I was married for 6 of those years to a man named Ethan Collins. From the outside, our life looked fine. Not glamorous, not tragic, just normal. A rented duplex on Hawthorne Street in Asheville. 2 cars that were both paid off but both made weird noises. A shared checking account we argued about once a month. We met in our 20s, married fast, and settled into the kind of routine that feels safe until you realize it's slowly shrinking you. Money was always tight. Not desperate, but tight enough that every purchase came with a sigh. I clipped digital coupons. I skipped dinners out. Ethan talked big about future plans, but never seemed in a hurry to make them real. I told myself that was just how adulthood worked. You wait. You compromise. You tell yourself, next year will be better. The ticket wasn't even my idea. I stopped at Ridgeway Fuel Stop on my way home from work because I was out of coffee creamer and didn't feel like driving all the way to the grocery store. I grabbed the creamer, a granola bar, and stood in line scrolling on my phone. The lottery display blinked above the counter, all flashing numbers and false hope. I almost laughed. Then I thought about how Ethan and I had argued the night before over a $42 overdraft fee. Give me one, I told the cashier. Just one. I scratched it at the kitchen counter later that night while Ethan was in the shower. I remember thinking the symbols looked wrong, like my brain couldn't line them up properly. I checked the numbers twice, 3 times. Then I shoved the ticket into the junk drawer because my hands were shaking and I told myself I was being dramatic. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. I opened it alone. I reread it until the words blurred. I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinets and tried to breathe like nothing had changed. I didn't tell Ethan that night, or the next, or the next. I needed time to understand what this meant before I let anyone else touch it. That was my first mistake. When I finally told him, I tried to make it sound calm, reasonable, like I was announcing a promotion instead of a seismic shift. We need to talk, I said, sliding the letter across the table. He skimmed it, frowned, reread it, then laughed. A short, sharp sound. This isn't real. It is, I said. I verified it. He looked at me differently then. Not happy. Not proud. Curious. Like I'd turned into something unfamiliar. That night, he was attentive in a way he hadn't been in years. He cooked dinner. He poured wine. He talked about us. Our future, investments, houses, trips. He said we needed to be careful. He said people change when money like this comes into play. I didn't realize he meant me. Within a week, the questions started. Small at first. Had I been sleeping okay? Was I stressed? Did I feel overwhelmed? He suggested I take a few days off work. Then, he suggested I talk to someone. Just to process, he said, smiling. Then, the paperwork appeared. Documents I hadn't seen before. Notes he'd taken. Emails printed out and highlighted. He said he was worried about my decision-making. That I'd been impulsive lately. That winning the money had triggered something. I laughed the first time he said it. The second time I didn't. When he booked an appointment with a therapist without asking me, I finally snapped. I told him to stop. That I was fine. That this was my win too, not just his. He didn't argue. He just nodded, slowly, like you do when you're humoring someone unstable. That's when I understood. Ethan wasn't trying to protect me. He was trying to position himself. And the worst part was how calmly he did it. How gently. How convincingly. If I'd reacted emotionally, he would have used it. If I stayed quiet, he interpreted it as proof. So I did the one thing he didn't expect. I started paying attention. I saved every message, every comment, every concerned suggestion. I opened a new email account he didn't know about. I started writing things down. Dates, times, exact wording. I learned very quickly that when someone is trying to rewrite your reality, your memory becomes your most dangerous weapon. I didn't confront him again. Not yet. I smiled. I nodded. I let him believe I was distracted, unsure, overwhelmed. And while he was busy building a case against my sanity, I was quietly building one against him. Because if there's one thing I learned before the money ever showed up, it's this. When people underestimate you, they hand you time. And time, used right, changes everything. I didn't change my behavior overnight. That would have tipped him off. Instead, I leaned into the version of me he seemed so eager to believe in. The overwhelmed wife, the quiet one, the woman who needed help making big decisions. I went to work like normal. I made dinner. I asked his opinion on small things I didn't care about. And all the while I watched him relax. Ethan started talking more freely once he thought I wasn't pushing back. He framed everything as concern. He told friends I was under a lot of pressure. He mentioned to his sister, casually, that I'd been acting different. He asked if she thought sudden money could destabilize someone. When she shrugged and said maybe, he nodded like he'd just received a diagnosis. At night, he'd scroll on his phone beside me in bed, sometimes turning the screen away when I glanced over. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. I could feel the shift. The marriage wasn't breaking loudly. It was being hollowed out. The first official move came disguised as kindness. I talked to a financial planner today, he said one evening, like he'd picked up milk on the way home. Just to get a sense of things. This amount is a lot. We shouldn't rush. I told him I agreed. He smiled, relieved. They mentioned safeguards. Temporary ones. Just until things settle. What kind of safeguards? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He hesitated, then shrugged. Power of attorney. Joint control. Stuff like that. Just to protect us. Us. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat in the dark living room with my laptop open and my phone recording audio. I replayed the conversation, quietly, listening to the way he said protect. The way it sounded like ownership. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not the one he'd researched. Not anyone he'd know. I found Laura Mendel through a women's legal network and booked a consultation under my maiden name. I didn't mention the lottery over the phone. I just said I needed advice about asset protection and marital rights. Laura didn't interrupt while I talked. She listened the way people do when they already see the end of the story before you finish telling it. When I finally paused, she said, "You're not unstable. You're being set up." Hearing it out loud made my stomach drop and my spine straighten at the same time. She explained it carefully. How mental fitness challenges work. How spouses sometimes weaponize concern to gain control. How the key wasn't proving I was sane, but proving intent. Documentation wins these cases, she said. Not emotion. I told her I'd already started. Good, she replied. Now you keep going. And you don't confront him again until we're ready. So I didn't. Instead, I let him escalate. He started suggesting I take a leave from work to rest. He emailed my boss without telling me, framing it as support. I corrected it politely, then forwarded the email to myself. He scheduled another appointment, this time with a psychologist he'd already spoken to. I thought it'd be easier if I handled it, he said when I asked why he hadn't told me. You've had so much on your plate. I went, not because I needed to, because I wanted a record. The psychologist asked standard questions. Mood, sleep, stress. I answered honestly, calmly. I mentioned the lottery, but not the conflict. I left with a clean evaluation and a note that said no signs of impairment. Ethan looked disappointed when I showed him. That's good, he said slowly. But one visit doesn't always tell the whole story. I smiled and nodded, and added the note to my growing folder. The real turning point came when I found the email. He'd left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he showered. I wasn't snooping. I genuinely needed to print something for work. But the screen lit up with a notification that froze me in place. Subject line, "Next steps financial safeguards." I read it. Then I read it again. He'd been corresponding with a private attorney, asking about temporary conservatorship options, asking how quickly something could be filed if circumstances worsened, asking whether a spouse's sudden windfall could be grounds for concern. Concern. I forwarded the entire thread to myself. Then I took photos of the screen for good measure. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, because now I knew exactly what he was planning. The following days felt surreal. He started being careful again, like he sensed something had shifted. He asked more questions about how I was feeling. He offered to drive me places. He suggested joint counseling. He asked if I trusted him. I told him I did. It wasn't a lie. Not entirely. I trusted him to keep doing exactly what he'd been doing. Laura reviewed everything and nodded slowly. "We're ahead of him," she said. "But we need one more thing." "What?" "Leverage. A moment where his intent becomes undeniable." It came sooner than I expected. One afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a clerk from the county office, politely asking me to confirm an appointment related to a financial capacity review. My hands went cold. "I didn't schedule anything," I said. There was a pause. "It was requested by your spouse." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat very still. Ethan hadn't told me. He'd moved without my knowledge. That was the line. When he came home that evening, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I asked him one question. "Why are you trying to prove I can't make decisions for myself?" He froze for just a second. Then he recovered, smooth as ever. "What are you talking about?" I showed him the call log. I told him the clerk's name. I told him the date. He sighed long and theatrical. "Maya, I was going to tell you. I just didn't want to worry you by questioning my capacity behind my back." He rubbed his temples. "You're twisting this." "No," I said calmly. "You're documenting it." The mask slipped then. Not all the way. Just enough. "You're being paranoid," he snapped. This is exactly what I was afraid of. And there it was. I stood up. "We're done talking tonight." He laughed. Actually laughed. "See? This reaction." I walked into the bedroom and locked the door. And for the first time since the letter arrived, I felt something close to certainty. He thought he was building a case. He had no idea I'd already finished mine. I didn't leave the house the next morning. I didn't pack a bag or call a friend or post anything dramatic online. I woke up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table like it was any other day. Ethan watched me over the rim of his mug, quiet, assessing. The air between us felt thin, stretched tight. He was waiting for me to break. I didn't. Instead, I texted Laura and wrote only 3 words. He escalated. Quietly. She replied within minutes. "Good. Now we move." The plan was simple in theory and exhausting in practice. I needed to look cooperative without surrendering control. I needed to appear unsure without being inconsistent. And most importantly, I needed to let Ethan believe he was ahead of me, just long enough to trap himself with his own actions. I agreed to attend the financial capacity review. Not because I had to, because refusal would have been framed as proof. The appointment was scheduled at a private office downtown. Neutral walls, soft lighting, diplomas framed just right to inspire trust. Ethan insisted on driving me. "You don't have to," I said lightly. "I can handle it." He smiled tight. "I know. I just want to support you." Support had become his favorite word. He used it the way people use a shield. The evaluator was polite, thorough, asked about my upbringing, my work history, my marriage. I answered honestly, carefully. I didn't mention Ethan's emails. I didn't accuse. I simply described my life as it was, stable, functional, deliberate. When Ethan spoke, though, the tone shifted. She's been impulsive, he said gently. Detached. She talks about the money like it isn't real. Sometimes she forgets details. I watched him say it, amazed at how convincingly concern could sound when paired with preparation. The evaluator nodded, scribbling notes. Then she asked Ethan to step out for a moment. His eyes flicked to mine. Just once. A warning or a plea, I couldn't tell which. When the door closed, the evaluator leaned forward. I need to ask you directly, she said. Do you feel pressured by your spouse regarding your finances? Yes, I said. No hesitation. No drama. Her pen stopped. I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. Silence used right is loud. The report came back a week later. No impairment. No diminished capacity. No cause for concern. Ethan didn't hide his reaction this time. He slammed the folder shut and paced the living room. They don't see it, he muttered. They never do. See what? I asked calmly. You unraveling. I looked at him then, really looked. The man I'd married, who once promised partnership, now openly frustrated that I wasn't falling apart on schedule. That night, I slept with my phone under my pillow. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew he was running out of patience. 2 days later, Laura called. He filed, she said. My chest tightened. What did he file? A petition for temporary financial guardianship. Emergency basis. Emergency. There was nothing emergent about my life. I went to work. I paid bills. I cooked dinner. I laughed at dumb videos. But Ethan had learned something dangerous. Systems often reward confidence over truth. We had a hearing date. 10 days out. I didn't tell Ethan I knew. Instead, I let him explain it himself. I did something, he said that evening, standing in the doorway like he was bracing for impact. I hope you understand why. I waited. I filed a petition, he continued. Just temporary. Just until this settles. It's not permanent. It's protection. For you, I said. For us, he corrected sharply. I nodded slowly. Okay. That was it. No argument. No tears. No raised voice. His shoulders relaxed just a little. That night, I emailed Laura every single file I had. Screenshots, audio recordings, evaluations, timelines, messages he didn't know I'd saved. She replied with one sentence. He overplayed his hand. The next 10 days were a performance. I cooked his favorite meals. I asked his opinion on furniture we couldn't afford. I thanked him for looking out for me. I let him believe the narrative was holding. Behind the scenes, Laura filed a response that dismantled his petition line by line. She attached evidence of intent, of secrecy, of coordination, of false concern. And she did one more thing, something I hadn't expected. She requested that the hearing be opened to full evidentiary review, meaning Ethan wouldn't just be heard. He'd be examined. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, less dramatic. No grand benches or echoing chambers. Just wood, fluorescent lights, and the faint smell of old paper. Ethan sat confidently beside his attorney, a man with a practiced smile and expensive cufflinks. I sat with Laura, hands folded, breathing evenly. When the judge entered, Ethan nodded politely. He looked like the reasonable one, the worried spouse, the man doing his duty. His attorney spoke first. He painted a picture of a wife overwhelmed by sudden wealth, of erratic decisions, of a husband stepping in out of love. Then Laura stood. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. She simply told the story in order. The lottery, the secrecy, the emails, the appointments scheduled without consent, the language of concern used as leverage, the attempt to act before I could object. She played audio clips, calm ones, Ethan's voice explaining safeguards, power, control. The judge listened, expression unreadable. Then Laura handed over the final document. Intent, she said. This is not protection. This is preemption. Ethan's attorney objected. The judge overruled. When it was Ethan's turn to speak, his confidence wavered for the first time. I was just trying to help, he said. She's changed. Yes, the judge replied calmly. She has. The ruling was swift. Petition denied. The judge didn't just deny it, he warned Ethan against further attempts without cause. He reminded him that marriage did not grant ownership. As we stood to leave, Ethan turned to me. You did this, he hissed. No, I said quietly. You did. Outside the courthouse, the air felt lighter. Not triumphant, just clear. Laura shook my hand. You're free to move your money now, she said. And your life. That night, I went home to the duplex and slept on the couch. Not because I was afraid to share a bed, but because I was already gone. And Ethan knew it. Because the next morning, when I opened my email, there was one message from him. Subject line, we need to talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new account. In my name only. And for the first time since the numbers changed my life, I felt like I was finally catching up to myself. I didn't move out right away. That surprised people later when they heard the story, but leaving immediately would have been loud, reactive, and exactly what Ethan wanted. He wanted chaos. He wanted something he could point at and say, see, this is what I've been dealing with. So I stayed, quietly, carefully. The house felt different after the hearing. Not hostile exactly, more like a stage after the actors forget their lines. Ethan tried to pretend nothing had changed, but the effort showed. He asked if I wanted coffee in the mornings, lingered in doorways, made comments about the weather, the news, anything neutral. I answered politely, briefly. We moved around each other like strangers, sharing an Airbnb. At night, I locked my phone, my laptop, and my notebook in the trunk of my car. That wasn't paranoia. That was pattern recognition. 3 days after the hearing, Laura called again. He's talking to a forensic accountant, she said. Not for you. For him. I closed my eyes. What does he think he'll find? Anything that lets him claim mismanagement, even optics. He's fishing. So he's not done. No, she said, but he's running out of moves. I didn't tell Ethan I knew. Instead, I did something he didn't expect. I invited him to dinner. His eyebrows lifted in surprise. Dinner? Yeah, I said lightly. We haven't really talked. Thought we should. He hesitated, then nodded. I think that's a good idea. It was a terrible idea for him. I cooked his favorite meal. Not as an apology. As a mirror. Roast chicken, rosemary potatoes, that stupid lemon dessert he loved. I set the table properly. Candles. Napkins. The works. He relaxed. I could see it happening in real time. Familiarity disarms faster than anger ever could. Halfway through dinner, he sighed and said, I hate how this turned out. So do I, said. He leaned forward. I never wanted to hurt you. I believe you, I said, and meant it. He didn't want to hurt me. He just didn't mind if he did. I was scared, he continued. That money changes people. Yes, I said softly. It does. He reached for my hand. I let him. Not because I felt anything, but because I needed him to keep talking. I felt like I was losing you, he said. Like you didn't need me anymore. That was the closest he came to the truth. After dinner, he went to shower. I cleaned the kitchen slowly, deliberately, then sat at the table alone. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just knew. That night, after he fell asleep, I unlocked my phone and transferred the last remaining shared account into a trust Laura had set up earlier that day. By morning, the money was gone. Not hidden, not offshore, just legally, irrevocably, no longer accessible to him. When Ethan discovered it, he didn't yell. He laughed. A short, sharp sound. You moved it. Yes, I said, without telling me. Yes. His smile didn't reach his eyes. That wasn't smart. No, I agreed. It was necessary. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Okay. That was the moment I knew I needed to leave. Because people who say, okay, like that are not accepting reality. They're recalculating. I packed that afternoon while he was out. Not everything. Just essentials. Clothes. Documents. My grandmother's ring. The notebook. I left the house key on the counter. I didn't leave a note. I moved into a short-term rental across town. Neutral. Unremarkable. Somewhere he wouldn't think to look first. The next move came fast. He filed again. Not for guardianship this time. For divorce. Citing irreconcilable differences and, of course, financial misconduct. Laura was almost amused when she told me. He's alleging you acted unilaterally and recklessly with marital assets. Is that going to work? I asked. No, she said. But it will be expensive. That's the point. The divorce proceedings dragged on for months. Depositions, motions, subpoenas. Ethan's team tried everything. Questioning my judgment, my emotional state, even implying I'd been influenced by outside parties. Laura dismantled it all methodically. Then came the moment Ethan truly lost control. During mediation, his attorney suggested a settlement that would give Ethan management oversight in exchange for a quicker resolution. Laura didn't even look at me before responding. No. Ethan slammed his pen on the table. You're being unreasonable. No, I said calmly. I'm being finished. He stared at me like he'd never really seen me before. You think you've won, he said. I shook my head. This was never a competition. The settlement ended up brutal for him. Not because I demanded revenge, but because the law doesn't reward manipulation when it's documented this clearly. The court granted a clean financial separation. No access. No control. No oversight. When the final papers were signed, Ethan didn't speak to me. He stood, gathered his things, and walked out without looking back. I didn't feel victorious. I felt light. A week later, I did something I'd been putting off. I told the truth. Not publicly. Not dramatically. I called my sister, my closest friend, a couple of people who mattered. I told them what happened. Not as a rant, but as a record. The reactions varied. Shock, anger, sadness. But no one asked me why I hadn't seen it sooner. That was a gift. With the money secured, I did something else unexpected. I slowed down. No flashy purchases. No new life montage. I hired a financial advisor, yes, but more importantly, I hired a therapist. Someone neutral. Someone who didn't know Ethan. Someone who could help me untangle the years where love and control had blurred. One afternoon, months later, Laura and I met for coffee. You know, she said, stirring her drink, most people don't catch this in time. I didn't feel fast, I said. You were, she replied. You listened to the quiet alarm instead of waiting for the fire. I thought about that on the drive home. The rental didn't feel temporary anymore. It felt mine. I painted one wall a soft gray, bought a couch I liked, adopted a dog who didn't care about money or stability, just consistency. Ethan tried once more. An email. Short, almost polite. I hope you're well. I've had time to reflect. I think we both made mistakes. Maybe one day we can talk. I didn't respond. Some conversations are only traps with better lighting. By the end of the year, the lottery money had stopped feeling like an emergency and started feeling like a tool. I set up accounts with intention. Education funds. A quiet donation here and there. Nothing that screamed wealth. One night, sitting on my balcony with the dog asleep at my feet, I realized something simple and profound. The money didn't save me. It exposed him. And in doing that, it gave me back something I hadn't realized I'd lost. Agency. I wasn't lucky. I was awake. And I wasn't done yet. I didn't announce the end. I didn't post anything. Didn't call anyone to market. Endings, I learned, don't need witnesses to be real. The first real sign that my life had changed came on an ordinary Tuesday. I woke up before my alarm. Not from anxiety, not from a dream where I was running late or being accused of something I couldn't quite explain, but because sunlight hit the edge of the curtain just right. I lay there for a minute, listening. No tension in my shoulders. No rehearsed arguments looping in my head. Just quiet. That's when I knew the worst part was over. I finalized the divorce 3 weeks later. No drama. No last-minute demands. Ethan's legal team had thinned out by then. Their confidence evaporated once every attempt to frame me as unstable failed. The judge didn't lecture. He didn't need to. The paperwork spoke for itself. When the stamp came down, it sounded softer than I expected. I walked out of the courthouse alone, got into my car and laughed. Not hysterically, not bitterly, just a small, surprised laugh. Like someone realizing they'd been holding their breath for years. I drove straight to the ocean. I hadn't planned it. I just kept going until the air smelled like salt and the road widened into sky. I kicked off my shoes, walked barefoot across cold sand, and let the wind slap my hair into a mess. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood there and let the waves do what they've always done. Come in, pull back, erase footprints without asking permission. That night, I booked a one-way ticket for a short trip I'd always postponed. Not to escape, just to choose. When I got back, I didn't rush into anything new. That felt important. For once, I wasn't rebuilding out of panic or spite. I was building from clarity. I moved into a smaller place by choice. 1 bedroom, lots of light, terrible parking. I bought furniture slowly. Second-hand bookshelf. A dining table I could refinish myself. Plants I had to learn not to overwater. I kept my expenses boring on purpose. Stability stopped being something I begged for and started being something I designed. The money sat quietly, exactly where it was supposed to. It didn't own me. It didn't define me. It waited. People ask what it feels like to suddenly be wealthy. The honest answer? Anticlimactic. The real shift wasn't the balance in my account. It was the silence in my head where fear used to live. I went back to school part-time. Not because I needed a degree, but because I wanted to learn something without turning it into a weapon or a resume line. I volunteered on weekends. Nothing flashy. Just showing up, stacking boxes, listening. It grounded me in a way money never could. I also started saying no. Not loudly. Not defensively. Just clearly. No to favors that felt transactional. No to conversations that minimized what I'd been through. No to people who suddenly remembered my birthday once my life became interesting. Some drifted away. That hurt less than I expected. Ethan tried one final time, months later. A voicemail this time. His voice sounded tired, stripped of performance. "I don't want anything," he said. "I just want you to know I get it now." I deleted it without listening twice. Understanding doesn't undo damage. And apologies that arrive after consequences are not gifts. They're requests. I didn't owe him closure. I owed myself peace. The strangest part was realizing how much of my old life had been spent managing other people's perceptions. As a wife, as a partner, as the stable one, I'd learned to anticipate reactions before they happened, to soften myself before anyone asked. That skill didn't disappear overnight, but I stopped rewarding it. One afternoon, my therapist asked me, "What do you want people to think of you now?" I thought about it. Then I shook my head. "I don't," I said. "I don't want to live like that anymore." That answer felt like crossing an invisible line. I set up long-term plans quietly. A trust with clear boundaries. A will that didn't assume blood deserved more than behavior. A future that didn't rely on anyone's approval. I shared details with exactly 2 people. That was enough. Sometimes I'd catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop. For the accusation. The reversal. The moment someone would tell me I'd misunderstood everything. It never came. What did come were small, ordinary joys I'd been too tense to notice before. Cooking without rushing. Sleeping through the night. Laughing without scanning the room afterward to see who noticed. Feeling safe in my own decisions. One night, I stood in my kitchen washing dishes, the window open, city sounds drifting in. And it hit me, not like lightning, but like gravity. I was free. Not because I won. Not because I proved anything. But because I stopped playing a game I never agreed to. The money didn't make me powerful. It just removed the leash. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. People who try to control you will always frame it as concern. They'll say they're worried. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're unstable the moment you stop being predictable. That doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're no longer useful to them. I didn't ruin my marriage. I survived it. I didn't lose my mind. I reclaimed it. And I didn't walk away angry. I walked away awake. If you've stayed with me through this story, and something here felt uncomfortably familiar, take that seriously. Support this channel by subscribing and sharing your thoughts below, and let your voice be part of the conversation. Because stories like this only matter if they reach the people who need them most.